So I'm at SES Toronto 2012, just come out of the Information Architecture panel. With me is Brent Payne from Bald SEO, because he's an SEO and he's bald.
That's right.
Brent's most famous for his work with Chicago Tribune, specifically the LA Times and brands like Tribune, yeah, that kind of thing. Yep. And actually, Brent had some very daring things to say about redirects and, you know, this one rule of only ever use 301 redirects. You've been breaking that rule a lot. Can you tell me more about that?
Yeah, so one thing we did at Tribune was a lot of breaking news information. And we had to do things like Michael Jackson dead, right? Yeah. All of a sudden he's dead, and we have to show up on the first page of Google for it. We were on the third page with LA Times, and we decided that we were going to redirect all of the content for Michael Jackson, all stories ever written about Michael Jackson, to the Michael Jackson dead page, as well as all pages about dead, death, dies, and dying, back to the Michael Jackson dead page as well. We redirected all of them. It took about 7 minutes for us to move from the around 30 and the 30s, somewhere in there, to number 2. Now, TMZ did still beat me, which pisses me off today, but, you know, whatever. They also said he was dead before he was actually dead. But, you know, that when you do that, then you get a little bit of a jump on the whole link structure. But anyway, that's a whole aside. So we did a lot of that type of stuff over at Tribune. I've utilized it in a lot of other clients that I'm working with as well to redirect old content to relevant content. Ticket brokers, for example, could use that. E-commerce sites could use that today to redirect an old television that no longer is being made to the most recent model of that television. So a bunch of different ways that you could use these 301 redirects. Now, one thing that I did recommend that was a bit controversial was doing this on a temporary basis. So obviously the Michael Jackson content is not going to forever redirect to just the Michael Jackson dead page. People still want to read about Michael Jackson dangling babies and catching his hair on fire in Pepsi commercials, and maybe a few people want to read about the Jesus Juice stuff, okay? But bottom line is we needed to turn that stuff back around. So we had a timer on the content. Yeah. So for only 4 hours, which typically in news SEO, it's a spike for about 2 to 6 hours. Yeah. And Tribune timed it for 4 hours, and all the redirects went back to their normal location. So it went from a 301 to, we used a 301 even though it was actually a temporary redirect. Oops. So yeah, and we didn't get in trouble for that at all. I do believe that Tribune, however, may have changed the way in which Google looks at on-the-fly SEO changes like that. And I believe that towards the end of my tenure at Tribune, that the 301s had slowed down quite a bit, meaning that they didn't pass that page rank immediately to the new page. I think they've slowed it down by about 3 or 4 days before they pass that off. So it's something that you might want to test and try yourself before you really go too crazy on it. But it worked out well.
Yeah, I mean, what I find interesting about what you just said is that, so we know as SEOs 301 redirects past the link juice. But even if they didn't, a 302 redirect could be a useful content strategy even in this case. So it's a fair assumption to make that everyone searching for Michael Jackson, regardless, would have wanted to know, would have had a news information need that he was dead at that point.
Yes.
And you would have, the strategy itself, even if no link juice would have passed, would have actually enabled discovery of that content on your site, which would have had an organic effect on the links anyway. So I love this idea of, like, you know, we can play a bit more loose with the rules.
Thank you.
Also, you had you mentioned about reusing expired content, and this is another thing. Like, I think a lot of people think about the web as like a museum of links and a museum of content, and what we're always doing is, like, we dare not change this one page that has 1,000 links pointing to it, but all we're doing is just kind of maintaining a museum piece. Can you talk more about what you've done in this area?
Yeah, so one thing that you want to look at is, okay, this content for this product is great. We get a lot of links to it. A lot of people have been interested in it over the months that it's been around. but now the latest and greatest iPhone's coming out, right? So the iPhone 2, the iPhone 3, the iPhone whatever needs to be redirected to the iPhone 7, okay? Why? That way you can reconsolidate that page rank. The link structure is going to be the same. Even the key phrases are going to be similar. You'll want to constantly utilize that power for the length of that product line's value, if you would. So we've done a lot of that redirecting. The reason why I like doing it is because it's easy to win. I look a lot at Google Webmaster Tools, the second page, the third page rankings for phrases that are getting some decent traffic. And then I do a site colon query, right, for your domain name. So let's say site colon, baldseo.com and look for, hair loss, okay? And you look for all phrases that have to do with hair loss that are just in your own domain. And if I'm showing up on the second page for hair loss, then, well, no, but it's true, right? If I'm showing up on the second page for hair loss, I want to make sure that, hey, second page, I'm not getting, 20% of the people go to the second page of Google now? Yep. I want to make sure that I'm showing up on that first page. Even if I'm number 2 or number 3, I want to try and get that number 1 result, right? I think like half the clicks go there. I don't know what the latest stat is, but that's ways that you can spend just a little bit of effort to have some huge gains in the exposure that you have. And so take all of your old blog posts that are about hair loss, right, and consolidate it to your one page that's ranking the best for hair loss. And maybe add some additional content in there, whatever you want to do. Don't mess with the content too much because you might lose some of your relevancy, but definitely a way for you to drive some quick wins into your website for as little effort as possible.
Brilliant. And I've still got one more question, which is to do with syndicating content between different brands. So you were syndicating between LA Times and another brand. And you talked about the Canonical Tag. And the Canonical Tag is particularly strong. It's been a great solution. But you had some do's and don'ts on the Canonical Tag and how to use the page slug. So yeah, just quickly, what are the advantages of syndication and what are the do's and don'ts around the Canonical Tag?
All right, so for Canonical Tag, you need to make sure that your content's similar. That's the first thing. And typically, if you just have a similar title tag with the same key phrase in it, I find that it works out fairly well. Another thing you can do is make sure your H tags are similar. And if you have those things and maybe one paragraph of text that's similar, you'll be fine. So don't worry about your navigation being different or your sidebars or whatever being different. You'll be fine. LA Times had a wildly different page than, say, Orlando Sentinel or KTLA, right? But because of the core content being the same, we're able to use a cross-domain Canonical Tag to make that work. So that's one way one thing you want to look at. Now, there's some other things you can do to make it stronger when you do that Canonical Tag. One thing you can do is look at how your content is being linked to across the internet into each of those pages. Google is going to look at the backlink profile on each of those pages to make sure that they're similar. That way you can't redirect, youporn.com to youtube.com just because they both have a lot of videos and they both have a lot of, they have the word you in it, okay? Yeah. So that's one thing that they're going to look at. The link structure for YouPorn is going to be wildly different than YouTube, I would think. I haven't actually looked at that. I tend to get distracted when I'm on either one of those sites. So, but it's something you definitely would want to consider is the link profile, the backlink profile as well.
But what is this thing about page slugs? And in your presentation, you said keep the page slug the same, but feel free to modify the story.
Okay. So in that case, it was kind of a Tribune-specific nomenclature that was there. Okay. So one thing that they always did is they like to keep the same slug forever and ever and ever. A slug to them was really, it's an old newspaper term that comes from the actual printing of the newspaper. And it moved into the web world for a lot of the media companies that are out there. And in Tribune's case, it turned out to be the URL they end up using as well. And in their case, it was a suffix to that URL. It wasn't the beginning, it was kind of towards the end of that. And in their case, the consolidation of the URLs from the content management system fed specifically through that slug. And if they kept that the same, then a lot of the tools that we built throughout the content management system help to consolidate that stuff through. Which, with Tribune, the content management system that we built there was amazing, absolutely amazing. The ability for us to redirect thousands of pages to one URL within 15 to 30 seconds, right? Take content about any specific topic and redirect it to a completely different website if we wanted to, was some things that we built into that content management system that really helped us to be successful. So if you're building a content management system, make sure that you build in the tools that you're really looking for that will give you the flexibility that you need to make things easier. I know that IT departments are typically really, really difficult areas. A lot of bottlenecks really happen in resources in the IT department. So get around those bottlenecks by just building a content management system where your marketing people, your content people can make the changes themselves without having to rely on the tech team to load a htaccess file or do a bunch of redirects in an IIS environment in order to get this done. Yeah. So build that tool the right way, and that'll give you the flexibility that you need to be successful in search engine optimization.
Brilliant. Brent, thanks very much.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you having me.